Okay, so can you all see that on your screens? Yeah. Fantastic. Yep. Excellent. Okay, so who we are. So my name's Sheila. I'm from BMR Health and Wellbeing, and what we do is we work with organisations in terms of taking a very data-driven approach to workplace mental health. Okay, and that we're actually meeting the legal requirements of what's required within UK legislation. So we look at doing a really kind of taking the fluff out of it, you know, making it what it should be. And that is very systematic and data-driven approach, which is really focused on identifying what causes the stress in the first place, rather than focusing on individuals and trying to fix people that are stressed at that time. And while we're doing that whole process, you know, reduces your sickness costs and all the rest of it. You'll see how we come on to that. And that will help to create a measurable uplift to your bottom line. And everybody's happy because you're getting a return on your investment in terms of what you're spending on your well-being programs. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today are your statutory legal requirements, okay, with regards to workplace mental health in the UK, okay, because legal requirements do exist for this in law. We're also going to look at the consequences of businesses who fail to meet these requirements, and I think this is really important because as we're kind of coming out of this pandemic, and I'll go more again into the size of the problem and the statistics as we go through, but what I'm already seeing from HR colleagues, a rise in the number of employees that are feeling that employers are contributing to stress levels. So there's potentially, we don't know in terms of claims against employers, how that's going to pan out moving forward as we come out, as we kind of start to come out of the pandemic and people coming back to work, because we've got a whole different bunch of workplace stressors that we didn't have a year ago, okay? And as I come on to some of the numbers, you'll see why that's become, you know, really, really significant. So what we need to be doing, you know, with all of this in mind is really looking at this integrated approach to workplace wellbeing. And this is where we've got this new standard coming in. That's a standard, it's guidance only, okay? But it's there for guidance, and it's been agreed across, I think 70 odd countries are on board with ISO45003 now. And that's, you know, a structured approach of how we should be looking at and managing psychological hazards under the framework of occupational health and safety management, okay? And then we're going to look at basically how you can look to measure your return on investment, because again, don't know about you, but a lot of the stuff that I see, you know, over the last 5 to 10 years, workplace wellbeing has grown, okay, as a thing and as a topic, okay? But it's grown in a big ball of warm, fluffy softness, okay? Because we think we are dealing with people, but we've wrapped it up in this fluffy, it's really difficult to talk about, yeah? It doesn't have to be, okay? It needs to be very systemic. It needs to be focused on the organisation and an organisational approach. And we need to focus less on people as individuals and the business as a contributing factor to that stress. And that'll become clearer as we go through. So, any questions so far? No? Okay. So if we look at the UK Health and Safety Legal Framework, okay, the Health and Safety at Work Act, yeah, that's been around since 1974, is basically telling us that as an employer, as far as it's reasonably practicable, we have a duty of care to look after the health, safety and welfare of employees, okay? We do safety really, really well, okay? So safety's done well. We do PPE, you know, when you've got all your COVID procedures in place, you've done all your COVID risk assessments, you'll have masks, you'll have all of this PPE equipment around you. You know, if you're in any business now, you know, you've got to have met all of those requirements, okay? So that's the safety element, okay? And to some respects, that's welfare. But where are you taking practical steps to ensure the welfare. Okay. Now, so the Health and Safety at Work Act is clear. That is the law, and that is what you have to do. You have a duty of care to look after people's welfare. The Management of Health and Safety Regulations, 1999, says how you do that, okay? And the way that you do it in terms of safety, i.e. you carry out a risk assessment, yeah, and you determine that you need 2 meters and you need your screens, you need your PPE, or you need a stab vest, and you're in the police force, whatever that PPE is, you do that by carrying out assessments. Yeah, and actually, in terms of psychological health, yeah, you also need to be carrying out risk assessments. Okay, if you're not carrying out risk assessments, you're not meeting your legal obligations as an employer. Okay, and that does extend to psychological safety, and not a lot of employers are specifically aware of that. Okay, so I mean, just in terms of a show of hands or a comment in the chat box, who does regular risk assessments around psychological safety in the workplace? No?
Yeah.
You do, Marcus?
I'll say yes from Marcus, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And
only recently.
Pardon?
Only recently.
Oh, really? Okay, okay. There's somebody else in the chat here as well. Let's have a see. You do surveys about once a year, okay. So that's fantastic that you're doing stuff with the surveys and getting those surveys out. But I'd be, be interested maybe when we get into have a chat later, kind of, how those surveys are executed, how long it takes to get the feedback, and then what you're actually doing with the information that's come on now, Shelley. Yeah, now we've started working with you, absolutely. So yeah, it'd be nice to kind of have a chat and cover that and how you're executing that at the moment. So we've got the regulations, and we do have to be carrying out these risk assessments, okay? And then what you've got is there's lots of guidance out there, okay, that says this is like best practice of how to be compliant, okay? So we've got the Health and Safety Executive, we've got the stress management standards there, okay? So you can go onto their website and you can download them, and they're free. You can go onto our website, we've got them in the resource library. So you can have a look at the UK Health and Safety Executive Stress Management Standards. And then you've got this further guidance in the new ISO standard that's coming out middle of this year. I think it's scheduled for July. Now, again, that's currently in draft format at the minute. It's about 95 to 98% accurate. If you were to go and buy a draft copy from BSI now, it'd cost you 20 quid, okay? A lot cheaper than when it's the published version. And you can start to kind of go through that. The content would be sufficient, okay, that's in there. It's not going to change hugely between now and then. Okay, so the law is clear. And then just to put that into context and give you some examples of case law here, going back as far as 1995, there was a case between Walker, okay, Mr. Walker was a social worker employed by Northumberland County Council, okay. As a social worker, he had a really heavy and very emotionally demanding caseload, okay, and he had a mental breakdown, okay. When he came back to work, he repeatedly asked for support and assistance, and the employer did nothing, okay? And as a consequence, he suffered a second breakdown. His employer then dismissed him due to ill health, okay? And he brought an action against them because they breached their duty of care to ensure that he had a manageable workload. Now, had he brought that action to them the first time he had a breakdown, okay, then they probably, and I'm no lawyer, so don't quote me, they probably would not, yeah, have found in his favour, okay, because to find in his favour, it must be reasonably foreseeable on the part of the employer. So if he didn't say anything the first time around and then just got ill and didn't reach out for support, yeah, it's not reasonably foreseeable on the part of the employer, okay? We employ people to do jobs, yeah? And there might be 4 people in one job, all carrying out the same duties, but people are individuals and they have different levels of what they can cope with, stress and pressure. Okay, and this is where you need to have procedures and processes in place where you can actually go, actually, the workload is too much, therefore, you know, we've got 4 people doing the same job and they're all stressed and the workload's all an issue, and we need to look at work design and how that work design is organised, okay? Or we go that actually, everybody's got equal workloads, there's 4 people all doing the same job and one's not coping very well. Okay, so is it that that person's not suited to that job? What is it? Yeah, so there's potentially performance management, and then there's workload and workplace stress issues. Okay, and I think a lot of the time employers are afraid of mental health and performance management because the two get muddled up because we don't have clearly defined processes and procedures to manage both effectively. Okay. So the Walker v Northumberland case really set the precedent in terms of this duty of care that extends to psychiatric injury. Okay, and there are other case laws in there which you can look up. Barber v Somerset, that set out a further 16 principles in that case, 3 of which I've put there, you know, that the employer must be in breach, the employee must be able to prove it was psychiatric injuries caused by that breach, as in Walker v Northumberland, and it was reasonably foreseeable. Okay. Cases there, because there's not just the protection, there's not just the Health and Safety at Work Act. You know, mental health is also covered under the Equality Act 2010, okay? And another psychological hazard in terms of bullying and harassment is covered under the Protection from Harassment Act, okay? And an employer can be held vicariously liable for the actions of their employees, yeah, in the case of bullying and harassment. So in Majowski versus St Thomas's NHS Trust, Majowski claimed that he'd been bullied by his manager and the employer was found vicariously liable, okay, for a course of conduct by one of its employees that amounted to harassment, okay. And the same way, one of the more recent ones and one of the ones that kind of hit the press quite a lot was Helen Green versus Deutsche Bank. And again, with the Helen Green case, under the Protection from Harassment Act, she was awarded £800,000, okay, for future loss of earnings under the vicarious liability in that case, and a further £35,000 for psychiatric injury. So the penalties can be really, really severe, okay? A lot of this doesn't get to tribunal because employers settle out of court because they don't want that, or there'll be payoffs, NDA agreements, settlement agreements, okay? The point is that this is costing businesses money, okay? And if we have the right structure, the right processes and the right procedures in place, it doesn't have to, because we don't need to be afraid of it as an employer, okay? So if we look at the size of the problem, okay, it's huge, all right? Any figure that you see on this slide here was pre-COVID, okay? So pre-COVID, there was a report, the Stevenson Pharma report that was commissioned by Theresa May in 2017, and they worked with, I think, 200 big city organisations down in the UK, and they did a report, and Deloitte updated the figures in that report in October 2020, all based on pre-COVID stats. Again, you can download this off our website on the resource library. And they estimated there that the cost of mental ill health to the UK economy was to UK employers was £45 billion, okay? And that's a huge number. And a lot of people would say that that is underestimated, okay? So in terms of actual tangible costs, they've accounted, if you look at that little chart on the side, 6.8 billion to actual absence costs, okay? 8.6 billion to turnover costs, okay? So kind of exits and entries into business. And then this other figure in the middle here that some people say was most likely to be double that, is anywhere between 26 and 29 billion on presenteeism costs, okay? And if you look in the Deloitte report, there's a whole kind of explainer in there as to how they've come up with these figures. And I mean, who on the call here has had days where you've got into work, or even a run of days or a couple of weeks where you simply aren't feeling it? You've got other stuff going on in your life, you rock up at work and you know you're not being 100% productive. You know you've coasted through that day, you've had your coffee, you've had your biscuits, you've had a chat. If you're a smoker, you might have gone for a fag. You're not 100% on it all of the time. And that is presenteeism. We're there, but we're not contributing. We're not really doing much. Yeah, and the longer that goes on, then this is where people start to potentially get into stress. Marcus, you've got your hand up, love. Did you want to ask a question?
Oh, sorry, it was a mistake. Apologies.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, so you know, with presenteeism, that's a really difficult one to quantify, but that is apparently a conservative estimate, okay? But if you think about the size of your business and the size of your organisation, the average cost per employee in your business for stress-related illness is 1,700 quid. Again, all of this is in the Deloitte report. All of this, you can see how they've come to those calculations, okay? It's 1,700 quid in the private sector. It's about £1,600 in the public sector. It's based, I think, on a typical salary of around 35k, okay? So you can kind of prorate it to your own business. And in the financial and legal services sector, that's estimated at double that figure, 3,334 per employee. So the number's massive. And the scariest one for me out of all of these stats is in the period 2019 to 2020, 17 million working days were lost due to work-related stress, the highest number ever. That was up a humongous 5 million on the year before. Again, pre-COVID, you know, I have no idea what those stats are going to be in the next instance, but I would imagine they're not going down, okay? Because we've all had a really difficult time of it this last 12 months. It's not all bad news. Again, in the report, average return on wellbeing investment, average £5 back for every pound you're spending, okay? And it's been reported as high as 9 to 1. Again, post-COVID, that's estimated to be going up, okay? And I just want to touch on the numbers here with death by suicide, and just to put it into context, is do a comparison here with COVID, all right? So if you think about COVID, you know, when we're going into something like COVID, you know, we've got epidemic status and we've got pandemic status, okay, when you're looking at these classifications. When we got to the end of last year, when we got to the end of December 2020, we had a worldwide pandemic for COVID, okay? Death by COVID at the end of December 2020 was 1.3 million people globally, yeah? Death by suicide was over 1 million people globally, okay? So that, for me, really puts it into context, okay? And death by suicide isn't going away. There is no vaccine. There's no magic solution, yeah? It's something that globally we all have to contribute to being able to address. It's a massive number, okay? And what's even scarier is that the number of young people dying by suicide is increasing. It's typically been 75% men, 25% women. 18 to 20 people per day in the UK die by suicide. People are dying by suicide as we talk, yeah? It's a horrendous number, and that figure, as I say, is going up in the under 25s, okay? So we can't say as employers, well, you know, mental health's not my problem. People bring it into work, you know, they need to leave it at the front door. No, you know, if that person's coming into your workplace and they've got mental health issues and they're not firing on all cylinders and they're not focused and they're working on a huge project for you that's worth millions, do you want them to be on that if they're not 100% on their game? Or do you want them to be able to turn around to you and say, look, I'm really struggling at the moment. I'm going through a divorce. Wife's gone. She's taken the kids, and I'm not feeling, you know, I am not 100%, and I'm really struggling. I need somebody to be able to either support me or take some of this off, because I'm not confident I'm going to give it 100%, and I don't want to let you down. Personally, I'd rather have a workplace that somebody can come to me and say that. Yeah. Equally, if somebody's operating a crane or a piece of equipment that is, you know, potential to cause death, if somebody's driving a train, I don't want to get on a train when somebody's highly stressed, or they're not sleeping, or they're drinking too much because they're going through a challenging time in life. Yeah. I would want that employee to be able to come to me and say, I'm really not in a good place right now, and be able to offer them support, redeploy them somewhere else, and then get them back to where they need to be and get them back on the job. Okay, so employers have to have this duty of care. You know, we're on, you know, where are all these stress levels? We're switched on 24/7. You know, employers that say, well, it's not my problem, they have to leave it at home. Oh, so equally, do they leave work at work when they clock off at 5, 6 or 7 o'clock? Or do you expect them to answer emails at 8, 9, 10, 6 a.m, 7 a.m, 8 a.m? Can't have your cake and eat it, yeah? If you want the whole employee to be on call, you've got to look after the whole employee. So we work in we're no longer a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday work life. It's different, it's all shifted. How's that going to look in the future? We still don't know. So we have to help and support. Now, if we move on, you know, into how workplace mental health is often done, who is familiar with and who has a lot of this in place in terms of workplace strategies? Okay. Just want to drop in the chat. Be interesting to understand, just kind of share with the group what people have got around. Typically, what I see when I'm speaking to people is that there's a big emphasis on mental health first aiders. Let's have a look what people are saying in the chat. Big emphasis on mental health first aiders, yeah, MHFAs. Lots of organisations now have EAP as standard. There'll also be, let's do some fruit bowls, let's do a bit of yoga, let's do some exercise classes, let's get people a wellness app, okay? Let's do a bit of meditation and mindfulness, okay? Great. All great initiatives, right? But there's one big thing missing here. Organisational responsibility, okay, and risk assessments. This is all very person focused, okay? I don't know how many of you have done any mental health training or are aware of the mental health continuum, but what you've got with mental health, same as we have with physical health, right, is we move up and down all the time. We're not, oh, I'm always depressed or I'm always happy, or, you know, we move up and down like we do with our physical fitness. So if we look at this continuum here, okay, there's kind of 4 boxes on the mental health continuum, okay? So we've got flourishing, okay, in terms of mental health. That's when we're in a really, really great place in terms of really optimal well-being. So mentally, we're highly motivated, we've got great positive relationships, everything's going right, we're absolutely flying. You know, those times when we just really feel like we're on it, we're really winning at life. I equate that to the physical equivalent of being marathon or triathlon ready. Doesn't happen all the time in life, yeah, but there's those times when we're optimally really on it, yeah, from a mental or a physical perspective. The majority of us will exist in mental wellness, okay. Well, we're fine, we're up, we're motivated, we're getting our showers, we're getting in, you know, we're walking the dog, we're going to the gym, and that's great as well, okay. But then we've got this area of languishing, all right, and when we're languishing, we've not got a mental illness, we're not mentally ill, but we're just not doing okay at the moment. So if we're languishing, we may be going through a bereavement, we may be going through a divorce, yeah, we're struggling, okay, when we're languishing, we're not firing on all cylinders, yeah, something's getting us down. And when that happens, That will continue for a small period of time, maybe, and then we move back into mental wellness. We've all had it where we've had our duvet days, we've dipped out, we've hidden from the world for a day or two, and we've come back fighting fit, and we're happy and we're well, mentally well again, and we've recharged our batteries and we're good to go. Or it continues for a period of time, okay? And then we start to maybe slip into depression, slip into anxiety. We might get diagnosed with mental ill health. At some point, okay, in time, 1 in 4 people in your workforce will slip into mental disorder. Okay, I mean, that is a bell diagram, so it's not, you know, those lines of where people sit will move up and down on a regular basis. So I would say that that languishing bit would be would be doing that right now, okay, through COVID, all right, and it will start to do this potentially as we come back out of COVID. It'll be different for every organisation, you know, it's not going to be one size fits all, one solution for everybody. It's going to flex, okay, up and down depending on your culture, your organisation, the job, the workloads, all of those different factors. My point is, all of the stuff that we do in terms of MHFA, wellbeing champions, exercise classes, all of that, okay, all of the stuff on this slide is focused in this bit down here, in terms of mitigating illness, okay? So it's like, oh, let's do an EAP, let's do return to work and how we can support people when they've come back after being stressed. Let's do MHFA, let's put people all across the organisation who can spot when people are ill. Really? Okay, so we'll do that, and that's great. We're capturing people that are stressed, all right? And then we're going to do this bit where we're promoting flourishing. We want to do some health promotion around the business, the wellness apps, the meditation and all that. But what you'll find in that health promotion stuff is that people who are mentally well or people who are flourishing will do that. They're really switched on to self-care, all right? So you'll find the same people going to those all the time. And you'll find the negative Normans, you'll find the people that are stressed, you know, the people that you can go, well, they're always miserable because they never come along to anything that we do. We try and put all these things in, but they're always nay in it, okay? Every organisation has got that type of kind of culture and those conversations going on. Those are the people that are struggling, and you're not reaching them, okay? Because you're only either reaching them once they're ill, yeah, or they just sit in this pot of languishing, not being supported in one way or the other, because we're not doing anything in this middle space, or we're doing very little in this middle space in terms of risk management, stress management, and education. Okay, Susie, you say you've got mental health, MHFAs and wellbeing champions. Do you mind me asking how big your organisation is in terms of numbers of employees? Okay, cross my mouse. 6,000 to 7,000, so a big organisation. And how many, do you have a ratio of how many MHFAs that you have in the organisation for that 6,000 to 7,000 people? Sorry, I just need to let my dog scratching at the window and he's going to start barking if I don't let him. Just 1 second. The joys of working from home. So you launched it back, so you've currently got 300. So again, if you look at 300 people to support 6,000 to 7,000 or 350, even if you look at 500 or 1,000, practically it's not enough. And then who supports them? Okay, so what we've really got to do is look at addressing. Okay, so your numbers are getting bigger, so you've got 1,000 safety coaches as well. So you're looking to provide a lot of support there. And that's great. Do you do risk assessments on a regular basis? Let's see what pops up. So you've got occupational health. So you're looking at you've got a really good approach there that you're doing all of this. So that's great. So that starts to cover that whole spectrum of mental health. The bit that for me that and again, one of the reasons why the ISO standards coming out is all around this risk assessment piece. Okay, we're not doing enough risk management. We're not doing enough stress management. We're not doing enough to take organisational responsibility for what's going on in the workplace. And Joanne, you're saying very few businesses are taking steps to address the cultural issues, and that's absolutely key, okay? With ISO, this is all about preventing harm, promoting a positive work environment under an occupational health and safety management approach, and it's risk assessment, risk assessment, risk assessment, okay? And again, you know, within the organisations, it's not just about educating the few in mental health. We need to be educating everybody, all right? So, you know, I'll share with you something personal with me is that, you know, way back a long time, a few years ago now, I've got a nearly 10-year-old, okay? And I had him when I was 40, all right? And I'd gone from traveling to Asia 3 or 4 weeks a year on business and having a really kind of independent lifestyle. So all of a sudden, an unplanned child arriving at the age of 40 and my whole world changed, okay? And I didn't know what had hit me. What I didn't realise until I started to do things like the MHFA training and even with that training, there was one video I watched, a 4-minute video clip, and I would recommend that you watch it if you've never seen it, called The Black Dog, all right? You find it on YouTube. And I watched this video and it was like a big light bulb went off on the top of my head, okay? What I hadn't realised, okay, was that I'd been struggling with postnatal depression since the day my child came home, okay? And that was 7 years it took me on one video to realise what was happening with me, okay? And I was embarrassed and ashamed and felt like I couldn't cope. And I just thought, you know what, this is silly, you know, go to the doctors. Go to the doctors and get it sorted. And I got on tablets and I got off the tablets a year later. I just needed a stepping stone and a bit of help and support to get me from A to B. That small piece of awareness, of education, of a 4-minute video gave me that knowledge, okay? That helped me to help myself, okay? So education is really important, that we let everybody have access to information, okay? It can't just be the few, it needs to be the many, okay? Just one little simple nugget could really make a huge difference in terms of somebody getting help, because mental health is an individual's personal responsibility, okay? It's not, you're not personally, you know, workplace mental health and employee mental health is a shared responsibility. We have to take ownership of our own mental health. I don't expect you to look after my I expect you to look after my physical health to a degree in the workplace, i.e., you know, give me safety equipment and all the rest of it. But I also have a duty of care not to do anything stupid that's going to mean I break my arm or I fall over. Same goes for mental health, okay? Shared responsibility, okay? So, you know, in terms of, you know, looking at these mitigate illness types of approaches here, we need to do something that meets everybody across the whole spectrum. And an alternative approach is to look at addressing the design of work, all right, and not the people. So, for example, now Mr. Muscles here, we wouldn't tell somebody who's going to come and work in a warehouse that, oh, you don't look very strong. Here's a gym membership, toddle off to the gym. When you can come, when you can lift 60 kilos or 50 kilos, yeah, we can get you on box packing because you'll be able to pick them up. We wouldn't do that. You know, you have manual handling, you have work design, you have work processes and procedures in place to keep people safe, to prevent injury. So why are we telling people to be more resilient to stress or to work longer hours or to do more when we could look at a different approach and say, okay, workload stressing you, What is it about the workload stressing you? Is there a different way to do it? Yeah, well, if we did it this way, or if you invested in automating this part of the process, this would go away. Or if I didn't have to spend as much time in meetings, I'd have a lot more time to do my job. Yeah, because a lot of the time, if we just ask people, listen and empower them to make those changes, the problem goes away. People doing the job know what they're doing. And if you ask leaders, you know, about the culture of an organisation, leaders will have one view, the people down here will have a completely disparate view, and the two never really meet in the middle. Okay, so ask the people that are doing the job what needs to change around work design and work environment, and listen to them and effect that change. It is amazing what impact that can have. And a lot of the time, the solutions that come out of it are not expensive, they're not difficult, they're not onerous. It's just a common sense way of approaching work in a different way. Okay, so let's just come on to ISO and what ISO is. So as I said before, it's all around psychological health and safety at work. Okay, and managing psychosocial risks. So Susie, you said, you know, you've got a lot of stuff that you're doing within your organisation. Do you currently have the ISO 45001 standard? Yeah, okay, excellent. Okay, so so ISO 45001 is an occupational health framework from International Standards Organisation. And actually, psychological health is covered in 45001, okay? However, what 45003 does is it makes it more detailed, it puts more meat around the bones, okay? But it's exactly, you know, if you read 45003, if you look at the way it's structured exactly as per the parent standard, okay, or the master standard. This is a voluntary standard, okay? You can't get certified to 45003 in isolation, okay? It's purely there for guidance, okay? And it's about making this more organisation focused rather than people focused. And not everybody, you know, thinks ISO 45003 is going to be the magic silver bullet. It potentially, you know, it's not, you know. The magic silver bullet is leaders and organisations owning this and really putting in processes and procedures that move workplace mental health as part of a systemic business process, okay? And this is what this is helping to guide employers towards, okay? So as I said before, it's around preventing work-related and psychological injury and ill health, promoting well-being within an occupational health and safety management system. And some of the key elements here, and if you've got 45001, Susie, you'll recognise a lot of these, but you know, we've got to manage it within the occupational health and safety system, okay? We need to be using a risk-based approach, yeah? What are the areas of risk? What are the areas that are causing the stress? Let's deal with the highest areas of risk first. A lot of mental health programs in the workplace are just throwing things in and hoping they stick somewhere and fix things. There's no specific targeted outcome because you don't know what it is you're trying to fix because you haven't asked the question. So we need to use this risk-based approach, and we really need to understand what's going on within our organisation, okay? And the only way that we can do that is, one, we need to drive it through leadership, okay? It needs to, you're right, Joanna, the British Psychological Society, yeah, they're pushing it to be more person-centred. Again, all of this stuff is out there for guidance, and, you know, it needs to, there's always going to be different views. No one's always going to think everybody's got it right, okay? Yes, there's an element of person-centred, but also, you know, organisations have for far too long be honest on the people and divulge themselves of any responsibility. So it needs to be this joined up approach. And again, it's a guidance document. You do what's right for your organisation. Okay, so leadership and work participation, okay, is essential. Yeah, if leaders are not behind it, people aren't stupid. People know. They know when you're box ticking. They know when you're paying lip service to something. So if they're not really committed to it, the individuals won't be committed to it. And if you as leaders are just saying it, but you're not engaging people and listening and empowering and taking action from what's being fed back to you, without that worker participation consultation, it's not going to go very far. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let the dog in because he's screaming to get back in. Sorry, 1 second. So where was I? So yeah, so we need this leadership worker participation and consultation, but also we need a documented framework. And again, the ISO standard will help you with frameworks. But what is our, documented process? What are our policies? What are our procedures? And who's responsible for what throughout the organisation? Okay, so we need to understand who is responsible for things, throughout the business. And then we need to be able to look at the risk elements. How do we identify them? How do we assess them? How do we control them? How do we review them? And how often do we do that? Okay. Have we given enough training for everybody? Okay. Because everybody needs to understand it. We all have it, so we all need to understand it. How many people in your organisation have to have some basic level of health and safety training when you join? We all have to have it. Yeah, but surprisingly, and what really surprised me, I was talking to somebody who'd left the police force because of mental ill health with PTSD. And what really surprised me about the role of the police force, and I know it differs from area to area, but this particular one that he worked in, they issue everybody with stab vests and PPE and all of the rest of it, that they're not allowed to absolutely go out without all of their PPE and all the stab vests. Do a physical fitness exam every 6 months, okay? If you don't pass your physical fitness test, then you're kind of not working. But there is not a single psychological assessment in the recruitment process or on an ongoing basis. And yet the police are dealing with lots and lots of different things, okay? And he was, seeing dead bodies, he was having to deal with traumatic road accidents, that type of thing. And there was no psychological assessment, there was no mental health training, and a very archaic approach to mental health, okay? It's again down to culture. So we need to look at this competency, resources and training for everybody. And let's make sure we're doing what we say to do. Let's make ourselves accountable by performing audits. A management review. You don't have to have BSI coming in or Lloyd's Register or any other assurance body coming in to do this. You can do this internally. This is what we say we're going to do. Are we actually doing it? Okay. And we need to make sure that we don't just walk in and we do it once. We don't just do it when we've got a pandemic. We do it all of the time. Okay, it's got to be this continuous improvement approach all the time. Okay, and it's risk assess, risk assess, risk assess, talk, consult, feedback, action. Okay. 1 second. So the hazards these are the circumstances and the workplace designs that are actually impacting the psychological health. So who would know what a psychological hazard is in the workplace? And feel free to unmute yourselves rather than the chat box. Or Clarice?
Workload, job, like role change, consultations and
yeah, absolutely, all of them. If you think about anything that just causes us stress in the workplace, if our workload is too much or too little, that causes us stress. Because it's all about balance, isn't it? Because it can be one way or the other. If it's autonomy, if we are either micromanaged or we're not given enough autonomy to do our jobs, that can stress us out. Is our role clear? Are we getting support from managers and other departments? Yeah, that can be stressful. Are we being bullied or harassed? Is there relationship conflict? If there's conflict, is it dealt with well? How are conflicts resolved? And do we feel rewarded and recognised for the work that we're doing? And then, you know, change consultation, organisational justice, all of these things contribute to whether or not we're going to have a good work day or a bad work day, okay? And if any of those are off, we're not happy in the workplace, you know? And, you know, you can, as you can probably guess, you know, what's most common, people will have high demands of workload, yeah, with low levels of control and a lack of support, exacerbated by COVID, because they're not in an environment where even if you're not getting that support, you can talk to somebody else, you can offload, you know, it's all blown like out of proportion tenfold now. And even if people were okay pre-COVID, you can't assume that they're still feeling okay. Even if technically nothing's changed in their roles, something's changed in the world and in the environment. So you can't assume that they're still okay. So you should be risk assessing. There's been a change, you should be risk assessing, okay, around that change. So you can't make the assumptions that they're fine. So what we need to do is identify what the hazard is, okay? I'll come on to how we do that in a minute, but basically, you know, ask the questions. We do digital surveys, okay? Digital surveys, it takes 15 minutes, 86 questions. We can customize them to the different areas, right? But we look at all of these different areas, okay? And we ask specific questions. Do you have enough time to do your job? How is your workload? Is it wet? Can you manage? You know, cognitive demand, emotional demand. You know, do you have enough control to do the work that you're doing? Are you micromanaged? You know, are you clear on what your job is? Yeah. Do you have conflict? Yeah. Ask the question. Yeah. All the way through. What happens then? We ask all the questions. We get all the results back. They come back instantaneous. As soon as we get 8 responses, we can start to see what's being said, and that changes as every response drops in, the results change all the time. What we're then able to see is the risk levels, okay? So it translates, and what we do here, all of this surveying, completely anonymous, okay? So we structure the data by department, by job roles, whichever way we want to slice and dice the data, okay? We can slice and dice it, but we don't do it whereby we can identify people. It's all anonymized, okay? Once we've got that feedback, we can break that down by department, we can break it down by management level, however we want to break it down and understand that information. But we can have a look at what impacts, say, sales, what are the stresses in sales, and what are the stresses in finance, for example, okay? Or what's the stresses for staff that are on night shift versus staff that are on day shift, okay? Because there'll be different results for different departments, yeah? And then what we do is we consult with employees, right? We've got the survey results back. This is what's found. And what we've got here is a score out of 100 of all of these different areas. And we can sort it from highest to lowest, okay? Anything above 50 is generally pretty good. Anything below 50 is where we want to look at. Okay, but what that allows us to do is to focus on the areas that are causing the stress, the specific areas. And then we talk about it, then we get worker consultation and participation, and then we get from them the solution, okay? And then what we do from that is we then put together an improvement plan. So we've done a risk assessment, now we've got a risk mitigation plan, all right? So we're putting together our plan based on the consultation. We've looked at a department. These are the risk factors. We've talked about it. We've come up with some solutions, and they're smart solutions, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timed, okay? Allocated a person, allocated responsibility for a person to execute that. And we've put a time frame on it, okay? So we've got a plan now. And what you'll find 9 times out of 10 is that your mental wellbeing management plan won't say, can we have more bananas, more mental health first aiders, and more meditation classes? It will say, you know, an example, we had a training department that, a training company, and they were to put training courses together for clients, okay? And workload came up on the survey result as a big issue. Okay, one of the high risk factors. And when everybody started to talk, what transpired was that it wasn't workload per se that was the issue. It was the timing of when they were asked to deliver work. So a request for training would sit on a salesperson's desk for up to a week, okay? It would be given to the training department to pull the materials together within 4 hours. So all they did was agree a service level that actually they had to have at least 3 days notice for that. And then anything else was agreed by exception. The workload problem went away. It was no longer an issue. So a really simple fix because of poor communication. Now you've seen, you'll have all experienced, if that happens in, you know, when that happens in the real world, what happens, yeah, without this process is that they go, oh my God, sales have just brought this. I know John's had that on his desk for a week and he's only just brought it over. So we all talk about it. Nobody does anything about it. We just get on with it until the next time. And you have a go at John, and because John got what he wanted the last time, he's got no incentive to bring it to you a bit earlier. We haven't got to an agreement that we're going to do that, yeah? But having this process helps you to fix the problems that you know are there, with the solutions you know how to fix them. You're just having this way to get people together to agree to do it. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we do that, we control the risk. Now, again, if you look at the risk assessment cycle, when we've controlled it or we perceive that we've controlled it, we need to make sure that we have, okay? And the way that we do that is we go back and we resurvey again. Now, we might not want to resurvey 86 questions or, you know, these different, all of the different areas. We might just want to resurvey workload and support and autonomy, yeah? If those were the 3 factors that came up, or it might be 1 factor. The thing is, we go back and we resurvey it, okay, with the same group. So we're comparing apples with apples, all right? And then we compare the 2 surveys. Again, the way we do it, we've got a platform, it does it all for you. And then we just see, did it improve for the better? Yeah? Did we score higher this time or did we score less? In other words, did it fix it or did it not? If it fixed it, brilliant. If it didn't, you go back and you start again. All right, and this is purely risk management principles, okay, and taking a Kaizen approach, yeah? And by Kaizen, what that means is it's a strategy where all employees, okay, at all levels of the organisation work together on a proactive basis based on the information they've got to regularly make small incremental changes that help everybody. So if everybody's involved, it then creates this powerful momentum. There's a reason that Kaizen approaches, yeah, have been used for years in the automotive industry and in manufacturing processes. Okay, it's usually a manufacturing approach through lean management, but it works, yeah. And if you think about Kaizen's principles, look at them there, they're on the cycle. You get your employees involved, they know why they're stressed. You gather a list of the problems, they know what they're stressed about. You get them to tell you what the solution and the idea is, because then they own it and they're empowered to execute it. You check it out. Does it work? You measure the results. And if it works, you do it. If it doesn't, you go again. But you go again all the time anyway, because this workplace mental health, these workplace stresses, you don't just dip in and then dip out and then everything's fixed. It's like anything else in your business. It's a systematic, continuous improvement approach that needs to be ongoing all of the time. But it doesn't have to be painful, doesn't have to be time consuming. But doing it this way, it's structured and it's focused and everybody's involved. So people are behind it. Okay, so we use a digital tool, Flourish DX. Flourish DX, I'm going back to what I was saying before about wellness apps. Yes, it's an app. Yes, it's desktop based, but it's a diagnostics tool with a built-in learning management system and self-care tools for employees. But the primary benefit for employers is the diagnostics, okay, and the simplicity of the diagnostics. So what the product includes are, from an employer's perspective, okay, we've got, I'm sorry I keep looking that way, but my big screen's there and my little screen's, the writing's too small. But it allows employees to conduct surveys, okay, and have data analytics. Surveys we can push out to 50 people or 5,000 people in less than 30 seconds, okay? We can push out reminders, all the rest of it. It's very easy to administer, okay? But what this does is it allows employers to gather feedback from employees and monitor these trends in the way that I've just shown you on the previous slide in terms of risk assessment, okay? And understand what the factors are. The platform has been designed to comply with workplace health and safety regulations, okay? And mitigating risks. And it's intended to comply with a lot of the elements of 45003. Okay, for psychological health and safety. And then what's also built into that is not just line manager training, but training for the whole organisation, okay, around mental health, sleep health, psychosocial risks and responsibilities, and then leader training. How many people have you got in your organisation, managers, that have had zero education on mental health and psychosocial risk? Nearly every one of them, because mental health training is not part and parcel of management training in all instances, okay? And as managers, you know, the traditional role of a manager for managing people and performance has evolved. We're managing people's well-being, we're managing people's mental health, we're managing psychological risk. We're never taught how to do it. So how the hell are they supposed to know? Okay, so if you've got problems with management support, some of that could be a lack of education and training for the managers. So we've got line manager training, and then we've got employee training. From an employee's perspective, they get the equivalent of a wellness app, okay? So they'll get stress reduction exercises, guided meditations, mood journals and wellbeing check-ins. They get mental health education. So, you know, hours and hours of small animated video content and a digital coaching bot that checks in with them from time to time, okay? Depending on how they've got that set up. So these are really, really useful tools for the employee and tools for the employer, okay? All built into the one platform. And then what that enables us to do is to really establish some KPIs in the business, okay? So again, if we've got wellbeing programs, are we just throwing money into a bottomless pit without knowing what it's doing for us? Okay, so does anybody have any well-being KPIs in their business? I'm guessing Susie will have.
No.
No? Okay. Okay. So it's not actually that difficult to measure. 1 second. Lost my chat box. Oh, you have. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Fantastic, Joanne. So you've helped business to put some in place. Brilliant. Yeah. So what we've got within the kind of survey tools that we've got, and again, you don't necessarily need survey tools to be able to do, well, you will in some for some of the cultural stuff. Absolutely, Shelley. So many people are actually engaging with the platform. Yeah. So yeah, when we're looking at financial or cultural KPIs, one of the questions that we ask in our surveys is, you know, what's your intention to quit? Okay, you know, one of the, you know, how much do you feel you're at risk of burnout? Yeah, would you access support, mental health support within the organisation, and if not, why not? Okay, so we've immediately got straight from the horse's mouth. Okay. 3 cultural KPIs, yeah? How toxic or how happy are people in our workplace? Would they be out of here like a shot, yeah? Or do they enjoy being in this organisation? You know, what percentage of staff feel they're at risk of burnout, okay? And how many people, you know, what are our stigma barriers? How many people still don't feel comfortable accessing mental health support from what we're offering in the workplace? And if they don't feel comfortable, why is that? Okay, is that because they think that people in the organisation will perceive them as weak? They don't think that they get support and time off for it. We ask those specific questions, we get those specific answers back, okay? Now, another one, and again, this is like when you come in to look at making the business case to employers, because a lot of the time they go, oh, we haven't got any money in the pot. And you go, actually, you've got money in the pot, you're just wasting it in all the wrong areas, okay? So one of the things that we can do, if you look on your P&L account for your business, yeah, you'll have your staff costs. And some organisations, I don't really come across any that do this yet, but most of them lump it in one big drop of, one big chunk of staff costs, okay? But let's get underneath those staff costs, yeah? How much are you paying in terms of absenteeism rates, okay? So how many days out of, how many sick days have you had in the business, okay? Lost sick days, okay? Regardless of what it's for, just take a top level number and you can say that at least 50% of that would be, regardless of what's been reported as the reason, 50% of it would be attributable to stress in the workplace or mental ill health, okay? And then look at the cost of that. You know, what does that cost the business, that absenteeism cost? And then you can also look at things like, and this is going back to that Deloitte thing I showed you earlier with, you know, your absence costs and your in and out costs. We can look at an average tenure. So how long are people spending in the company? Why are they leaving? If the what's your attrition rate of employee-led exits from the business? Yeah. So are they leaving in droves of their own accord? If so, what's going on there? We need to understand that. Okay. If the attrition rate is being led by the employer, what's going on in your recruitment process? Why are you recruiting people that aren't suited to your business? Okay. So then what are your recruitment costs? What are your exit costs? What are you paying in NDAs? What are you paying in settlement agreements? All of that is your wellbeing budget. Okay. Because do the wellbeing programs well, okay, or your workplace mental health or your psychosocial risk, whatever name you want to give it, okay, do that well, those numbers will go down. It will pay for itself. And actually, any further improvements on that, oh my God, I can't speak. Direct impacts on your bottom line. Yeah? For every pound you spend saving there, yeah, it's direct impact to your bottom line because you're removing unnecessary costs out of your business. Okay? Now, I'm coming near the end now. I always just running over a bit. I always finish on this one where there's, you know, we see this a lot, don't we, on LinkedIn, or we hear people talking about it on Facebook or Twitter or wherever it is across social. Our people are our greatest assets, okay? And it really, really winds me up, okay? In a lot of organisations, we say it, but we don't mean it, okay? Because, again, let's look at the P&L. Let's have a look at the balance sheet, okay, for our business. We've got assets on there, okay? We go out and we spend 100 grand or 50 grand, yeah, on a shiny new piece of kit on a production factory floor, okay, or a new IT system or whatever. But when we buy that piece of kit, one, it shows on the balance sheet, so we know it's there. It's in as our asset, like fixed assets. And then around that piece of kit, we'll have a maintenance program, yeah. We'll have, if it's a company cars, we'll have service schedules. We might have a fleet manager, okay. And then, you know, if it's a piece of machinery on a manufacturing shop floor that's chucking out widgets, we'll make sure that that machine is optimized to chuck out as many widgets as possible but yet without breaking, yeah? So we'll make sure we're getting the maximum efficiency, maximum output, yeah? And we'll do maintenance on it. We'll make sure that we look after that piece of kit as best we can, okay? Because we can see its value, its pound, shilling and pence value, showing me age now again, on the balance sheet, okay? But can we say we do the same for our people? So, you know, we can cope with downtime on our assets in terms of our plant and equipment, and it doesn't, you know, our business doesn't stop if we don't have a company car or a company car breaks down, but if our people break down, processes in our business potentially break down. So yeah, people are your greatest assets, but actually, are you really treating them that way? Okay. And that's me done. It's me off my soapbox. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to ask me any questions, if you've got any comments to make, feel free to kind of put your cameras on and take yourselves off mute. Be just nice to get your feedback.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed it. Can I just ask 2 questions? One, you said about ratio of mental health first aiders. What would you say is a standard or a recommended?
Again, there's no legal requirement to do it. I would say that you do at least what you've got for physical first aiders. I think physical first aiders is 1 to 50 or I think it's 1 to 100 on physical first aiders. I would put twice as many mental health first aiders in. But it depends. Again, if you're educating all in the business, use the same ratio as you would physical first aiders.
I understand. And what was the name of the video you said?
The Black Dog.
Black Dog.
Yeah, it's an animated Australian video.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes, Lindsay?
Thank you so much, Sheila. Just a question. So as a consultant, can we utilize your, what did you call it?
The Flourish.
Yes, the Flourish. Can we buy in the Flourish for the client to utilize, or do you have to do that work?
The client would, I mean, I can have a separate chat with you on that if you want, Lindsay, and just explain to you how Flourish works. But essentially the client, I've got the lady on here, I don't know if she's still here, Shelley. So their organisation have Flourish, and they've implemented it across the whole organisation because every employee within an organisation has the platform. So for example, if you've got clients that you think would benefit from this, I can have a chat with you and we can look at how we can do that on behalf of your client, and how you can manage that with them.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Just to reiterate as well, yeah, I'm still here, Sheila. It is it's a great platform, really, really good, and all the team members are fully, you know, we're getting them fully engaged with it, and I think definitely I would recommend the platform to any organisation to use, definitely.
Oh, thank you, Shelley. I mean, again, a lot of, you know, and this is why I make the point, it's not a wellness app, because there are lots of wellness apps out there, but typically a lot of wellness apps that are given to employees, 25 to 30% is seen as a good uptake in terms of people using it and logging into it. Shelley works for a fitness chain, okay? So they've been in lockdown and without gyms open, yeah, for the best part of 12 months. And during that time, you've introduced mental health first aiders into every gym, haven't you, Shelley? And every single member of staff has to go on Flourish. They have a mandatory mental health policy throughout. And they've introduced this at a time when every single one of those gym owners has had a reduced revenue, okay? Yeah. And we're already over 50% of engagement rate, and this is with people not being in work. This is with all people being on furlough. Okay. Yeah. And what's really interesting with the statistics for Shelley's organisation is that, and this makes sense, is that the biggest engagement figures have come from leadership down. Okay. And the number that we need to get up in terms of engagement, and we are expecting that to change significantly from next week, are the personal trainers. Because we can see, is it by head office, is it by senior leadership team, is it by franchisee owners, or is it by staff and personal trainers? Okay, so we can see where we need, and so that helps us to drive an engagement piece. Who's really getting focused on that? Helps us to develop champions and people that will really be advocates for the product throughout the business. So, and then because it's a gym organisation, they all get a bit competitive with each other. Is that fair to say, Shelley?
Yeah, definitely.
So we publish league tables on who's doing the most engagement, just to create that bit of FOMO.
Oh, that's great.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay. You'll get a follow-up email just with links to the recording, etc. And then there'll be a link there, I think, to my calendar. And then we can book in a call if you want, Lindsay, and have a chat. And anybody else, you know, just feel free to book a call in with me, and we can speak a bit more in detail then.
That's fab. Thank you so much.
Okay. Enjoy your first day out of lockdown on Monday, everybody.
Yay!
And have a great weekend.
And you too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.